So many people think and dream about creating wealth for themselves, for their families and for their future. And yet very few ever achieve the ability to be able to accumulate enough wealth to be able to last them an entire lifetime and to minimize the incidence of dependence on the government or family members. According to some global reports, there are only about 60 million millionaires across the planet. If you really divide that by the number of people on the planet, which is 8 billion, it represents less than 1% of the entire world population. Part of the reason is we don't really have enough money and wealth education. And in this video, I want to talk about the foundations, where I'm going to discuss the 6 stages of wealth creation and how every single one of them is incredibly important for anybody that is determined to create sufficient financial wealth for themselves, their families, and their future. The first stage of wealth is money creation, and that simply means making income. Now, you don't need to have a huge lump sum already to create wealth, but you at least need some cash flow coming in, which means you need some sort of income coming in. You don't need a lot of money to make wealth, but you need some. And so you need to make sure that whatever you choose to do, whatever income you're making, there needs to be sufficient cash flow to meet your living expenses, perhaps your lifestyle expenses, and then you need to have enough to be able to put aside for the future. So really, that's where it starts. Most people don't even make enough money to be able to put something aside for the future. If you haven't seen one of my videos in the past, I talk about what percentage allocation you need to make for your age group. But the reality is, at a very minimum, 10 to 15% of your annual income needs to be allocated towards future wealth creation. So stage 1 is just ensuring that you can create money. Stage 2 is actually the wealth creation stage. So this is where you decide that you're going to start creating wealth. You make a decision, you plan, and you commit to it. And in order for you to start creating wealth, you need to make the decision that you're going to start buying assets and start making investments. This is stage 2 of wealth creation. If you don't buy something, you don't own something, you don't invest in something, you're not going to be able to create wealth. So stage 2 is the second stage. Once you have made enough money to be able to look after your living expenses and your lifestyle expenses, any additional surplus that is left now needs to go into purchasing assets or making investments. Stage 3 is about wealth growth. We need to make sure that wherever the money is invested, you are strategically ensuring that those assets are growing. One of the ways that you grow your assets and investments is through capital appreciation. Another way is through income, which could be yield or dividends or distributions depending on where you invest. And the third is through tax benefits. So now that you have made investments, the third stage is about growing your investments. And at the very least, you need to make sure that after fees and expenses and after the taxes that you have to pay on any money that you make through investments, that your investments are growing at a faster rate than the rate of inflation. And inflation simply means the increase in the value of goods and services over a period of time. Everything becomes expensive over a period of time. You need to make sure that the money that your investments and assets are making is sufficient to be able to keep up with inflation, to pay for any fees and charges, to pay for taxes, and a little bit more. So that's the wealth growth stage. The fourth stage is the wealth accumulation stage. Now you need to start to make sure that your assets are not just growing, but you're starting to consolidate your asset position. You need to have sufficient diversification. You need to make sure that you've got assets in different places and you're starting to accumulate wealth so that you are able to achieve a certain level of net worth. Otherwise, what's going to happen is if you sporadically and randomly make speculative investments, you're not going to get anywhere. You don't just have to start creating wealth, you have to accumulate wealth so that you have a chance at having enough at some point in the future where you do not need to work for money, where you do not need to rely on family members, and you don't need to rely on the government, and you can look after yourself and your family without having to work in a job. The fifth stage is about wealth protection. As you're starting to create wealth, accumulate wealth, you need to make sure that you put some sort of a firewall protection around it. And that really means that you need to assess everything that can go wrong from a risk perspective, and you need to mitigate, manage, or minimize that risk. Think about all the things that can go wrong that can affect your financial future. Markets can crash, interest rates can go up and down, inflation can go up, somebody, maybe the main income earner in your family, could have a disability, they could lose their job, they could be injured, there could be a premature death, you could have some unexpected expenses. There are many things that can go wrong. The good news is that every single risk that can derail you financially can be mitigated, minimized, or managed in some way. Of course, you need some education, or you need the guidance of experts. So it is not good enough to just create wealth and accumulate wealth. Now you need to make sure that you're protecting your wealth, so when things go wrong, which they will, you don't go backwards again. You see, so many people are pretty good at being able to start that journey of wealth creation, but then they don't protect what they're building. You must put a firewall around it, and this can also be done through emergency funds. It can be done through insurances and so on and so forth. It's outside the scope of this video for me to go into the details of how you do it, but the reality is you need to make sure that you're protecting your wealth as well. The sixth stage, which is the final stage of wealth, is to make sure that you preserve your wealth. See, once you have created wealth, and you've created wealth because you made some good decisions, you accumulated wealth, you protected it, and now it's been created. You have achieved your financial goals. Congratulations. But now what do? You've got to make sure that it's preserved, because it can still be taken away from you. There are many ways that wealth can be taken away from you. You might pass it on to your children or somebody else, another beneficiary, who may not be financially smart. So they may make poor decisions and lose that money. You may have a lawsuit, which can also result in you losing money. There could be various other factors. There could be a black swan event, which is a global event that can wipe out your wealth. So you need to now make sure that your assets are preserved. And one of the ways that you also preserve your assets is through good estate planning and asset protection planning. This is where a lot of wealthy people will have companies, trusts. They're going to have all these different types of mechanisms like wills and power of attorneys to make sure that the wealth that they have created remains in the bloodline and is not diminished. This is a great opportunity for you to assess what stage of wealth are you at. If you're really determined to become wealthy, if you want to become the first millionaire in your family, and I'm not talking about inherited wealth, I'm talking about you wanting to create your own wealth. If you really want to be the first self-made millionaire or a multimillionaire in your family, you need to understand these 6 stages. As I said, a lot of people will just go and make some random speculative investments, and they think that that's their job's done. And then they just cross their fingers and they hope and they pray and they just expect that things are going to magically happen for them. I want to make sure that you understand that that's not how things work. There is a process, there is a methodology, there is a thinking process that is also required in this. You need to make sure that you understand this. If it was so simple and easy to just create wealth by just doing a few things, by making some random investments, then everybody would be wealthy. The fact that we have less than 1% of the world population that become millionaires is a testament to the fact that there are a lot of things that people don't understand. Now, this is just about helping you understand the broader context of wealth, and make sure that the moment you decide, you are either knowledgeable on all these 6 steps, or you work with advisors who are specialists in these 6 areas, so you can be the first millionaire in your family.